Tēnā tātou katoa, tēnei ka mihi ake kia koutou, e whai wāhi nei ki te haramai nei, ki te ātawānanga, ki te kōrero e pāna ki tēnei kaupapa, I tēnei wā, no reira tēnei ka mihi ake kia tātou. Ka tīmata tātou ki te karakia, no reira unuhia, 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 ko te urutapu nui a tāne, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua I te ara takatu. Ko I ara e rongo whakairihi ake ki runga kia tīna, tīna, haumi e, hui e, tā I ki e. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for joining in with us today here at MB around defining energy hardship for Aotearoa. This forum and time is for us to kind of share with you what we've done up to date kind of in defining the hardship, energy hardship, and go through the process with you and the proposals that we have come up with. And we're encouraging you to put through a formal submission as well. But before we kind of, and then also we're going to talk to any of the questions that you may have around the submission process at the end. But before we kick into it, we're just going to introduce some of the MB team here. So I'll just introduce myself. Kia ora koutou, ko Reira Minera tōku ingoa. Huri tēnei no Ngāti Tōranga Tira, Ngāti Koata, Ngāti Tahu, Ngāti Whaua, Waikato Tainui, Ngai Tahu, e mihi ana kia koutou. I'm a senior iwi and regional relations advisor here at MB. Quite new to the team, but I'm excited to be here and listen to some of your whakaaro as we present today. And I'll hand it over to Daniel.
Cool. Kia ora tātou. Ko rangatui te o maunga, ko parirua ahau, e tipu ake e ki o te poti, ke he kina whakatūtuki ahau e mahi ana. Ko Daniel Griffiths tōku ingoa, no rena tēnā koutou katoa. So kia ora, I'm Daniel Griffiths and I work in the evidence and insights area here at MB. I live up in Parramatta, lovely part of Wellington. I'll pass over to Ella to introduce herself as well.
Tēnā koutou, no o te poti ahau, engari ki te whanganui atara ahau e noho ana. Ke hikina whakatūtu ki ahau e mahi ana, ko Ella Priest Forsyth ahau, no reira tēnā koutou katoa, e mihi ana kia koutou. Hi all, I'm Ella and I am working in Daniel's team, leading the work to define energy hardship for Aotearoa. And I'm going to be talking through some of the proposals that we have out for consultation today with you all. So the session is to better inform you of the proposals that we are consulting on. It's designed to give you some detail on the proposals that we have out for consultation, and also to give some time for you to ask any questions about these to help you make a submission. We will consider any questions that you ask in our summary of submissions, but we would really encourage you to make a formal submission on the material as well. So actually, next slide, please. A little bit of background to this work and why we're doing it currently. We know that energy hardship affects the lives of New Zealanders, and that for many people in Aotearoa, they're struggling to pay their power bills, or they put up with feeling cold to save money for other essentials. However, we don't have an agreed definition for energy hardship currently, or an agreed way to measure whether it's increasing or decreasing over time. And this particular project came out of the government's response to an independent review of the electricity sector, the electricity price review, which recommended that we develop a clear and generally accepted definition of energy hardship and determine what statistics should be gathered to monitor changes in its levels. So what will the definition and measures do, and how will they be used? So the primary purpose of this work is to develop an agreed understanding of what energy wellbeing and hardship are and the factors that affect it, so that we, across government, industry, community groups, researchers across Aotearoa, are able to agree on what actually is energy wellbeing and hardship, and how we can all come to address it together. We're also looking to measure and track energy hardship levels in Aotearoa over time at a national level. So to determine the number of whānau and households who are experiencing different levels of energy hardship or wellbeing, and how that's tracking over time. This is we're not coming up with policy in this particular piece of work, but the work that we're doing will help to inform policy and project across government, industry and communities. So we're looking for people who are coming up with policies to address energy hardship to be able to use this work to inform how they plan those policies, to look at what are the key drivers of being in energy hardship or energy wellbeing, and what are the different things that we should consider when designing projects, and how might this improve the energy wellbeing for whānau. In terms of individual projects to address energy hardship, as I mentioned, the work that we're doing is really looking at a national measure, but we do see this being able to inform and feed into the design and evaluation of individual projects to address energy hardship. But the measures that we're proposing are not designed to be the only measure of success for these projects. So there'll be a number of project-specific things that will feed into the planning and setting up of these and how their success is measured. For example, one project-specific outcome that might be being sought might be an improvement in different health indicators, and health impacts are an important impact of the living in energy wellbeing or energy hardship, but as an outcome, we think it's important to keep it distinct from national measures and of energy hardship directly, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll be talking about measures in our proposals in terms of the numbers of whānau and families experiencing energy hardship and how we measure that. But I want to note that people's stories are also really important to hear, and that numbers don't tell the whole story. So throughout the process so far and going on into the future, we've been creating opportunities to hear people tell their stories and their experiences, and these have informed our understanding of energy wellbeing alongside the measures, and will continue to do so. So we think it's important to hear and consider those stories alongside the measures that we are proposing today. And so, for example, some of these stories may be heard through projects that are designed to address energy hardship, for instance. Well, projects that are ongoing, which may have a component which is designed to address energy hardship. For example, some of the projects which are funded by the Māori and Public Housing Renewable Energy Fund. So we've done some initial thinking and engagement and development of these proposals, and currently we're in this consultation period where we're putting out some draft material, and we'd really like to hear your feedback on whether we've got it right, whether you have any improvements that you would like to suggest. And I will just would like to talk through how have Māori been and will continue to be involved in this work. So we've been guided by the Te Arawhiti framework, and we've sought to collaborate with Māori in the development of our draft proposals. At the beginning of this project, we've reached out to a number of Māori groups and researchers to collaborate on this work, and following this, we met with a number of representatives of iwi, Māori retailers and community organisations, along with researchers and community members to gain their input into the development of the proposals that we'll be talking through today. So we've tested our thinking with them and improved draft material based on their input. And we've further engaged with representatives of various Māori groups, such as rural marae community, Māori living in urban centres, housing and social sector leads and researchers through a series of wānanga. And this, the output from the wānanga, the kōrero that we've heard, will go into both testing our thinking and also further refining the work that we have done so far, along with the submissions that we received throughout this consultation period, and working alongside the Energy Hardship panel to seek their input into the further refinement of our proposals. The Energy Hardship Expert Panel is a panel that's been set up and is chaired by Kerry Brown, who is Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Whātua, Ngāti Mahana, and a councillor at Hutt City Council, as well as the DHB board member. We're also holding this webinar now to provide an open platform for iwi and Māori groups to hear about our proposals and also ask questions. Going forwards, we're planning to meet with Māori Wellbeing and energy researchers to further develop the proposals. This recommendations that we make to the Minister on how to define and measure energy hardship. And then just wanted to note that this is a journey, and so we anticipate that this is an iterative process. Some of the measures that we're recommending are interim, with further development required in the future, but we think it's important to start now. So the Electricity Price Review recommended that MBIE develop a definition of energy hardship, but within the context of the government focus on promoting energy wellbeing, we've developed a definition of energy wellbeing, so framing the definition in an aspirational and strength-based approach. So we propose that energy hardship is on the opposite end of the continuum to energy wellbeing. This is an overview of the key proposals that we are consulting on. So we have, as I mentioned, developed a plain language conceptual definition of energy wellbeing, and this is supported by a conceptual framework which really unpacks all of the drivers that contribute to a household's experience of energy wellbeing or hardship. And then following on from that, we're seeking to measure what we want to minimise. So we're looking at how to measure energy hardship, and we've proposed a suite of measures, both primary and secondary. So this is the draft definition of energy wellbeing that we have developed. So it's when individuals, households and whānau are able to obtain adequate energy services to support their wellbeing in their home or kāinga. And we have, I'll talk more about how you can give us your feedback later, but one of the things that we're really interested to know is whether you think this definition is right for Aotearoa. We have a few boxes around the definition, sort of unpacking it further. So just noting that able to obtain encompasses both affordability as well as accessibility of energy supply. And energy services is really to say that while this work came out of the Electricity Price Review, we're focused on making sure that households are able to use the services such as lighting, heating, cooking, washing to support their wellbeing. We're not focused on a particular energy source. And adequate to support their wellbeing feeds into a number of different frameworks for wellbeing. And in their home or kāinga is just noting that we're focusing on people using energy where they live or stay. So primarily domestic, not commercial energy use. So this is the proposed framework, which aims to show the different factors that can influence the energy wellbeing of a household. This really supports the proposed definition of energy wellbeing and presents all of the factors as interlinked around the whānau and the home in the centre. And there's a number of different factors that we have affecting the household's energy wellbeing. I won't go through all of them now, but just as an example of how things can be interlinked, we have household resources, which throughout our development, we know does include household income, which is an important part of your resources, but is actually a lot more than just income. we received feedback and initial discussions with iwi groups that for some, they held mātauranga that enabled them to hunt and gather food on their whenua, which left them with more money for other things. And then the ability to do this is affected by where you live and your environment, which also affects the climate that you're living in, as does your dwelling characteristics. So for instance, how well insulated your home is. So it's just an example of how these different factors can interact to affect a household situation. And we know that for different whānau, there will be different factors that are more strongly influencing than others. Moving from defining energy well-being to thinking about how we might measure energy hardship, we've developed a number of indicators of energy well-being. So these indicators have been proposed to connect household experiences with the well-being definition. And our aim is really to capture the outcomes of the various factors of energy well-being with just a few indicators. And we're seeking feedback on whether you think these are comprehensive. These really frame what we're working towards, as well as enabling us to think about what we're going to measure. So then we look to moving to thinking about how we'll measure energy hardship nationally. And this has been done in a number of ways that we've come across from our research of looking at what people have done overseas and both in Aotearoa before. And you can break down different types of measures of energy hardship really into two groups, one being objective, and often these measures are looking at the amount of money a household is spending on energy compared to their income. If we just look at how much a household is spending, we don't necessarily see whānau who are rationing their energy use, and so they may not appear as spending very much on energy, but that's actually because they're not spending enough to support their well-being. So it's really important that we actually consider how much energy is required to be consumed rather than just is being consumed. At the moment, we don't really have the data for that, and that's one of the things that we're proposing that we do further research into. The other type of measure that we've looked at is subjective measures. So that's based on a household's reported experience. For example, their responses to the question, are you unable to adequately heat your home? Throughout the initial development, we've come across criticisms of measures that say you're in hardship, you're not, or are you in hardship or not, because energy hardship is a continuum. So there's more to it than just a binary measure, as well as more to it than just using a single measure, as it's a complicated issue. And so there's a number of different dimensions that we should capture with a number of different measures. That said, so we're proposing to have 4 primary measures of energy hardship, and 2 of those are based on expenditure, looking at how much a household is spending compared to their income. And we've just noted that we think these should be interim because we'd like to do more development to look at how much a household should be spending rather than what they are. The other 2 primary measures are subjective measures, looking at the household's experience. So whether they put up with feeling cold to keep costs down a lot, or whether they have a major problem with damp or mold. I should note that the measures, when we've looked to measure energy hardship, we've considered official data sources that we're able to take measures from now. And one of these is the Stats New Zealand Household Economic Survey, which is where all of these measures come from. We've also proposed a number of potential secondary measures of energy hardship. So we're really interested in hearing from you as to which ones you think are important, whether you think some are missing, whether you think some should be primary, how many you think there should be that we should consider officially. Yeah, open to feedback on all of these. There's quite a few, so I'll just note that we have a collection and we're really interested in your feedback on them. So I mentioned previously that we know that for whānau living in energy hardship, this can often result in poor health outcomes. However, at a national level, changes in indicators of health can't be directly attributed to changes in levels of energy hardship. So we're proposing to select a number of health and wellbeing indicators as energy hardship related indicators that we should track as well, separate to our measures of energy hardship, direct measures of energy hardship. And we're really interested in hearing your thoughts on which ones you suggest that we consider. I want to note quickly that we have done some initial analysis on some of the potential measures of energy hardship based on data that we have, and we've published that as a technical appendix to some of our consultation material. And we have a number of future work plans. We think more needs to be done to understand the proposed measures, as well as the depth and severity of the energy hardship, as well as the gaps in the available data. So I mentioned looking at required energy, housing quality measures will inform our further work, energy literacy, and a number of different things. And in our consultation survey, we're asking for your feedback on which research should be prioritised, and are there any other gaps that you'd like to note with us? So we have a consultation survey open on our website. So have your say at MB Defining Energy Hardship. You'll find all of the consultation material, which you can read through, and an online link to a consultation survey, as well as you can download the questions and fill them out and send them back to us by email or post. Submissions are open until the 16th of December, and yeah, we're really interested in your feedback. So if you'd like to make a submission, I'd really encourage you to do so.